On today's episode of the Virginia Investor Podcast, we have real estate investor, Class A general contractor, developer, and creator of the Rehabber's Playbook, Brandon Lindsey. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, man. This is really awesome what you've built together. And I'm calling it right now, this is going to be a big podcast because you're in the best position to do it. You know, I just look at you as a leader. And we need leaders in this space, you know, guiding conversations and showcasing people. So it's an honor to be here.
I appreciate that. I am in a very fortunate position of having a good network with a lot of strong people in it, and you were one of them. And I'm happy to have you on this podcast, and I can't wait to see the value that you provide. You have done a lot of things. We have similar backgrounds in some regard and working in different industries and different spaces, but I wanted to jump right in to rehabbing. We have a lot to cover, and you are a wealth of information. So my first question to you to get this thing kicked off, what came first, rehabbing or investing?
Actually, investing came first, which is, I think, very important because, you know, you see people who are teaching, I guess, a construction management side or focusing on it, and we need more people to do it in general. But people who come at it from like the contractor background, the construction background, I just think there's a missing piece there. So, yeah, I started as a real estate investor. Actually, my first investment was in college. It was my senior year, and my buddy put a book in my hand. It's Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Awesome.
So I'm a victim just like probably 90% of the people who watch this podcast. And I fell in love, and we started looking for our first deal.
Why did he put that book in your hand? Because you either put yourself around this guy for a reason, or maybe it was just pure luck that he said, "Hey, Brandon, check this out." Like, what triggered that?
It's honestly something I don't talk about a lot, but I think we've talked about it. But so I've known him since high school, and what we've talked about in the past was how we've been entrepreneurial minded our whole lives. Like, I remember as far back as like middle school, freshman year of high school, knowing that I can never work for somebody, right, which is one of my many flaws. But I knew that I was going to own a business one day, and I knew that I wanted to create something of value by myself or with partners. And he was the same way in high school. So when a lot of people were out doing whatever, and trust me, we did, we had our fair share of fun too, but we would get together during nights on the weekends, and we would draw up business plans, and weird for a high schooler to do, but that's what we would do. Good thing we never tried any of those business plans because they were like sports gyms and stuff, which actually another thing we relate on. But anyway, we just connected on that for a very long time. It turned into college time. He fell in love with it first, and he put it in my hands. And then we partnered on our first deal in college. Man, it's great to have friends like that in your network, because I know early on, especially younger years, it's kind of like every man for himself. Right. And people don't really want you to win. Yeah. Like you kind of find that out. And I'm not trying to be negative about that. Like you certainly have friends that want to support you and lift you up. But I would say early on, before people understand that there's plenty to go around, you compare yourself and you compete probably way more than you should. So it's awesome that you had a buddy that was willing to share that information with you. And then tell us about your first deal. Well, and I'm going to hit on that real quick too, because I think this is a funny story. You have these moments in your life that they're vivid and you remember them forever. One of them was me telling all my friends in college that I'm about to invest in real estate. I'm talking about real estate, how it's passive income, tax benefits, millionaires do this. And I remember, still a good friend to this day, but he looked at me, he said, "We don't want to talk about that. Like, stop talking about that." Yep. So I thought it was really funny. But anyway, first deal, we two college kids without money, without family money. We scrapped together as much as we could. It was a lot of family and friends that we kind of pulled together, which is something to be careful about, but a lot of people do it to get into their first deal. And we knew a realtor who was the dad of somebody we play baseball with. So we said we're on the hunt for real estate investment. And he found a house at auction, or that was at auction. And we put in a bid, and we got the deal. It was one of those things, and I always look back to this too, because it's the building blocks of what we built with the Rehabber's Playbook. I remember we closed on a Friday. We celebrated, yay, excited, And come Monday, we go to see the property. We stand out with the keys. We're looking at this house that needs repairs. And we look at each other and we're like, what's our budget? And he's like, $20,000. I was like, but what's the $20,000 for? He's like, I don't know, the repairs, So it was definitely a light bulb moment that this business has such a big construction management part of it that people overlook. And I think it's something a lot of people can relate to, where they buy a property and they're real estate minded, but they forget there's a big construction side to it. And that's like the oh crap moment. Like, wait, we actually have to do what? We have to find a painter and a flooring contractor and vendors, and we have to run a good budget. We can't go over budget. What's our schedule? So luckily, we went over budget, but not that much. And we ended up keeping it for a couple years as a rental. We sold it. Everybody made money, paid off the people that we brought in to help us purchase a first deal. And that was really everything there. And we were lucky because we could have been 30,000 over budget very easily. People do it every day. But we were just lucky that that wasn't the case for us.
Where did real estate investing take you from there? Did you do more deals before you got heavy into the rehab side of things, and they were distressed properties? And is that how you grew more fond of the rehab side?
At that point, I was up in Northern Virginia training athletes a lot like you were. And we're a small business, again, small business minded, entrepreneurial. But once I fell in love with real estate, I was like, I need to make my way down to Richmond because there's not a great, easy market in Northern Virginia to do that. So immediately I call my friends up. I'm like, we need to go network. And it's funny what networking looks like at 21 years old, which is like go to bars and see if you can meet people. I'm telling you, I'm blessed. I met a real estate investor at a bar that weekend who interviewed me on the spot at a bar. This will never happen to anybody probably. But interviewed me on the spot, said come in Monday for an interview. Came in Monday, and he offered me a job as a project manager.
Awesome.
We did 50 to 100 flips and rehabs a year in new builds, which was just like, again, another blessing because nobody gets that experience without like putting your own business and money and time at risk. So I was able to learn the business through that. That's where I just nerded out. I do have like an obsessive type personality where I just dive all in. So I'm building systems and processes, and my boss was like a former VP for Ryan Homes, so he brought in a lot of their processes, and I just nerded out. I Gantt charts all day, spreadsheets all day, talking to contractors, managing a dozen plus rehabs at a time, and that's where I really fell in love with the rehab part of the business. Yeah.
When you put yourself in that bar, did you know that there would be investors there? Like, did you go to meetup.com and anything, or you just went to a random bar, grabbed drinks, and like started talking about real estate?
Pretty random. Yeah, I wasn't expecting. It was like a long weekend I had in Richmond. And that Thursday I came down. We went to a Flying Squirrels game. I meet some new people. I say, hey, I'm looking for a job. Anybody you know, let me know. We meet somebody that we go out with on Friday. And then they take us to like actually a company party, but it was just like a random company party that was at a bar.
Awesome.
And that's where I met him. It was so funny. And he said, I'm in real estate and I need somebody to help me. So in my head, I'm like, I don't want to be a real estate agent. Like that's what I thought it was.
Yep.
But next day I looked it up and I was like, this could be something pretty awesome for me.
Was there a specific rehab project or development project that really got you hooked? Like, was there one thing that you were like, this is it? Or was it just over the course of the year or two that you worked for this developer where you just fell in love with it?
It's a really good question. I've never thought of it. I think it was a gradual process.
Yeah.
Something about leading teams, building teams, another thing we can relate on, attracted me to it. Managing people, timelines, budgets, just organization. I'm definitely a very organized person, or I try my best to be. So all these things that just kind of struck something in my personality was probably what made me fall in love with it over time. Another thing is I just like the people in the business. I love people in construction. They're some of the hardest working, family-oriented people, as long as you work with the right people, of course. So, griping with them on site, celebrating wins on site, seeing something that started as nothing or started as a distressed property turning into something beautiful was, of course, always a great part of it too. So there's so many parts of it that strike me at my heart, So I think it was a gradual thing.
That's awesome that you put yourself out there. You did somewhat of an unconventional thing. You just kind of went out on a limb, came down to Richmond, and decided you need to build relationships, which I massively support anyone just trying to build relationships early on.
Yeah.
So then you found yourself in this position after getting interviewed at a bar or shortly after the bar or whatever.
Yep.
To work with this developer, you got some incredible experience through that. Where did you go from there?
From there, eventually I jumped out on my own. And this is another thing, building blocks of TRP. It was really fun jumping out on my own and knowing my budgets, knowing the people to get the job done, knowing timelines, knowing different neighborhoods in Richmond. And you see so many people jump into the business and they struggle. And if you look at all the different parts of real estate investing, they usually struggle in the project management. That's where budgets get blown. Right. That's where deals blow up. I was able to be really successful early on just because I knew all those things. So again, building blocks with TRP, I knew that if we could teach people this part of the business and support people in it, they could be more successful, especially because it's just overlooked. Yeah, I jumped out on my own. I got my Class A contractor's license. I started doing flips and rehabs for other investors while I was doing flips and rehabs for myself too. And we just kind of kept the pace. We were always doing 12 plus properties at a time, and it was just a lot of fun. And we started building, we flipped like crazy. We had a couple neighborhoods where we flipped all the time and built a lot of good cash and connections and resources in that way.
So you went out on your own, you got your Class A GC, and then you were doing more investing, flips and rentals and things like that. When you were helping other investors in some capacity, was it more so in they're hiring you as a Class A GC, or were you like, let's partner on things, or let me just add value and be a coach, or a little mix of all the above?
Mix of all of it. Yeah, it definitely was something that I could provide value in multiple different ways, and everybody needs something different to their business. So in one sense, it is one vertical, construction management, whether we coach you, partner with you, or we contract for you. In another sense, that is still kind of three different things, but we were able to streamline it and do good business with it.
When did you jump into TRP, which we'll call it TRP, but it's the Rehabber's Playbook, just so anyone who's listening knows what we mean when we say TRP.
Good call.
Yeah, we'll go the whole time and just call it TRP. But so the Rehabber's Playbook, you basically went from contractor to coach. And now do you still do some contracting today and things like that, or is it more just heavily focused on TRP?
If I really, really like somebody, I would.
Yeah.
No,
All right.
It's rare, but every now and then I will. If a good opportunity, if it's in the neighborhood, a lot of times it's just, does it fit in what we're doing and it doesn't distract us for other things. But it's very rare. It's mainly coaching and building myself.
So what was the pull from contractor to coach? Like, because basically you're taking yourself somewhat out of the game.
Yeah.
And putting yourself as like a head coach or something like that.
Yeah.
You mentioned you enjoy leading teams and building teams and things, and I could see where that would carry a lot of weight being a coach versus being in the game, kind of like day to day doing it yourself.
Right.
Now you get to lead and mentor and coach and help people get stronger
Sure.
at what they're doing. What was the pull for you, and maybe what was the sign that told you this would be a good idea?
Man, I can rattle off a handful of things that just went through my head as you're asking that question. I'll start with Dealmaker, which you know. I went to Dealmaker 2020. I want to say that was the first time you went too.
It was.
And 2020, went to Dealmaker, and it was just like, you walk out of that room transformed. Everybody can relate on this. And I walked out of that room just thinking, and I'm just watching speaker after speaker give their time and their expertise, and I walked out of that room thinking, I need to find some way to give back to this community, because that is something that they're giving for free or for like little or for membership or whatever it is. I want to do the same for this community, because it's just such great people in that room too. Like Jim does a great job of just gathering some of the best people you'll ever meet. Yeah, that's one of the building blocks. When it comes to contracting, the construction business, I've done everything. I've done wholesaling, I've done flipping, I've done new construction, I've done rentals. Contracting is, and this is maybe a tip for people to go easy on your contractors sometimes, contracting is the hardest business I've ever had to run. It's very difficult. It's nothing but managing fires for the most part.
Right.
And you can be as organized as you want, but there's just always a surprise around the corner. So I did want to kind of get out of that, get more into the investment side and help people out, like I said, because so many people, I just looked up to so many people helping each other out in the business. So I got pulled. And then there's just like a natural part of me that I like coaching. I hate to say this about baseball, but I was a D1 baseball player. I think I was a really good baseball player. For some reason, I also think I was a better coach. Mm-hmm. You know, there's something I think I'm a better coach. And there are people like this. In sports, you realize this too. There's people who just are natural coaches. And I think that's something I was blessed with.
That's awesome. And for those who are interested in the whole Deal Maker program, check out Jim Ingersoll's episode. It came out, I can't remember what number it is, maybe episode 4 or something, but check out the episode with Jim Ingersoll and learn more about Deal Maker. 2020 is the first conference I went to, and I left feeling a similar way, where I was like, okay, I'd never met Jim before that, in person at least. I'd never met him before that, and a lot of people in that network. I knew a fair amount of them, but had never really been ingrained in that network. And then after leaving that conference, I was like, these are good people to be around, and you're pulled to help them because they do whatever they can to help you. Yeah. As an investor. So it's pretty cool. So you left that conference with a similar mindset where you said, I have all this information, all this value, and all this knowledge, and I can give back to this community and help them out.
In a way, actually, I didn't know how I could give back.
Okay.
Which is so interesting because if now looking back, it's like, it's so obvious, right? Like I've been in so many different roles in the construction side. I've been a contractor. I've flipped myself. I've done new construction. I've been a project manager. But at the time at Dealmaker, you know, this is after a couple years of doing it on my own. And I never plugged into a network. I never went to an event. It's always kind of intimidating your first time.
Right.
But yeah, I just didn't know what to give. I just knew I wanted to give. And here's a great book people should read. It's Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. I read that book. It's all about the study of extraordinary people. And there's something about extraordinary people that it might not be obvious at the time, but you can look back at just where you've been blessed to be in, like different positions, different roles. Like, what do you have that other people have not? You know, like they have a story in that book about Bill Gates. Like he actually had he was like one of the only people with unlimited access to a computer before it became mainstream. Like that's how he got, like there's story after story of people who are just put in these positions. So something about that book and a few other books that I read was like, wait, light bulb, you know, this is actually what I'm good at. This is how I can help people. So yeah, it wasn't immediate. And it's such a good question because I always want to encourage people to look deep at what you have to give people. Because once you start giving, the world's like, it just opens up. So much stuff gets returned to you.
Yeah, we're very similar in that regard. There are so many people, and this worries me when I hear this. Like, let's say you have meetings with people, you share this information because that's the type of person you are. The other person, let's say, has never done an investment, doesn't have a network or anything. You will often hear that person say, well, I don't really have anything I can do for you. Like, there's no value I can add for you. And I think people need to understand that they have all the value in the world. They just need to like find it and offer it. Right. Yeah. And I almost feel like it's kind of a cheap way of saying like, well, I'm new to the industry. I can't really give back to you for the time you just spent. Now we do it without expecting them to. Like my answer is always like, that's fine. That's right. Cool. But if people believe that they had value to add, they would find that value and they would add it. And so when I was getting started in property management, I had no real estate experience. I had a good network, but it wasn't necessarily real estate backed. But the deal was like I knew who I needed to meet. And an example would be I would meet with a lender, and this lender's been in the game for 20 or 30 years. And I was talking to him, and we were talking about our networks and how we can support each other and things like that. And he's been doing it forever. And he has a massive portfolio of investors that he works with. And I'm like, I don't know anyone compared to this guy. Like, how am I supposed to add value to him or help him out? Right. And I left, and then I went to, he was a commercial lender. And so, and he told me like what buckets he wanted to feel, what type of assets he wanted to lend on at that current time, right? And it happened to be commercial multifamily. So I went to this commercial multifamily broker that I knew pretty well and was like, hey, there's lenders like dying to get some deals in that bucket for the bank. I think we should give them a shot. And they were like, well, we're getting ready. We're actually having a issue with this lender over here on this $4 million building. Let's give them a call. So they gave him a call like a day later. And I didn't have hardly any value to add, but I went and tried to find it.
Yep.
And they ended up doing a deal with that lender, and I still talk to that lender today.
That's right.
And it's one of those things where, like, I think anyone could add value if they really want to, but that's where it starts. It seems counterproductive to want to add value to other people instead of yourself and spend your time doing that. But some of the wealthiest and most successful people that I know spend their entire day trying to help other people, and it just naturally will come back to them.
It's perfectly said. Yeah, it's like a law of the universe. You know, there's a great book, small book called The Go-Giver. I recommend that one too. It's like a fiction. It's kind of like The Richest Man in Babylon type book, but it's a great mindset to remember. Is the more you give, the more the universe, the more, you know, everything just kind of comes back into your hands. If you look at all the people I'm with today, they are heads and shoulders above me, right? Like they have these huge portfolios. I know I have a lot more growing to do, but the reason that I'm close to them and I get to work closely with them is because I'm just constantly giving to them.
Right.
And that's how some of the best relationships I've formed started, is by me just helping people out, like Jim, like Daniel, like all these people I get to like call friends now, just started with me saying like, what can I do for you? Not even asking, just like
Just
giving.
doing.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So you're along this journey. You have all this wealth of knowledge and information. You found what value you can provide. You've been introduced to this network. And then now you are stepping more into the coach mentality. I don't think you went straight into starting the Rehabber's Playbook. I think maybe there were a couple renditions of that first, and then you got into TRP.
That's right.
But when you got into TRP, what is the first problem you're trying to solve?
It's a great question. I don't even know. I think everybody has a first thing that needs to be solved for them. Some people need better contractors. I think that's a big thing. You know, some people need to run better budgets and estimate costs better. Some people just need to put a good process together that starts with their scope of work and kind of filters into their schedule and their budget. We take an approach that's kind of like a buffet style. Like let's find your weak point and let's put things in front of you that make that stronger. Because everything I just listed are common problems for people in the business. Running bad schedules, running bad budgets, contractors ghosting you, hiring the wrong team, not getting their W-9 or the right paperwork. So I don't know if there's a first one. It's a great question. It's more of like a spread.
Do you lean pretty heavily into technology, right? And I think that's not very common in that space to go deep into tech. I mean, it's becoming more and more common.
Right.
Do you get these folks online and have like templates for them and have like roadmaps for them to use based on what they need?
Yes. Yeah. So, I mean, we really give a roadmap is the best way to put it, what you just said. We give them the roadmap. You know, it's just so nice to, what I like to say is we deliver confidence. I always say TRP delivers confidence, because you go into rehabs and it's really common to not have confidence. What better way to give confidence than to give you a roadmap from the start to the finish? That's not only the schedule, but that's getting the right team together, the budget and everything. So yeah, we give them templates. They get templates for every type of project that they might come across. If you're doing cosmetic renovations, we'll give you the full roadmap. If you're doing full gut renovations, you get the full roadmap. Nowadays, we're leaning heavily into new construction. We're giving you everything that you need. I just want to make sure everybody who's a member, everybody who's part of our group has what they don't need to go anywhere else to find what they need to be successful.
Awesome. So are you using AI for anything, like estimations or anything like that?
Yeah, this is a new thing. So, you know, I never want to overpromise. But we're doing some cool things with AI right now. At the easiest or the most basic level, AI can do so many things. It's the highest leverage tool that's ever existed. And I'm just like, you're catching me right now where I'm like taking courses and
Nice.
networking with people and joining groups all about AI. So I have a lot to learn. That's why I don't want to overpromise. But right now we're building tools that help people estimate costs. We're building tools to help people with creating like a detailed scope of work that they can hand to their contractors, where if anything goes wrong, they can say, look, the scope of work said exactly this, right? And there's so many different things, onboarding contractors, welcome packets, whatever it is, we can build that out with AI tools. Now, people look at it, and trust me, I started when AI came out, I was like, well, there's no way this can help in construction. But anything written, anything process-oriented you can leverage AI to help out with it. So these are early stages, but it's something we're very excited about.
You might already know this person, but I need to make an introduction. If you don't, there's an electrician that came. We were building out this office and everything, and I walked them through where every outlet and just everything needed to be switched, everything, relocations, new, wire run and stuff like that, and different lights on different circuits and everything. And he wasn't writing anything down, and I was just like, all right, but he knows what he's doing, right? And, he's got a great reputation. He's been in the game for a while. And I'm just like, all right, whatever. And so he says, all right, okay, let me read it back to you. And he just opens up his phone, which he wasn't on the whole time, right? And, and AI was transcribing everything I was saying. And so he was reading it back to me exactly what I was saying. And then, and it was accurate, like 100% accurate. And then he went back and said, hey, give me 5 minutes. I need to basically let the AI know how much material we need, like because of distance, like how much wire we need and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And he was like, I have an estimate for you in 5 minutes. And I was just like,
to talk. Yeah.
It was insane. So he literally, he walked out, and I think he walked the floor again, and said was talking into his phone how much material he would need. And then he just said, create an estimate. And then literally in 5 minutes, it was probably like a $14,000 job, labor, materials, tax, everything. And everything just scoped out, and he had it. He was like, want me to email this to you? And I was just like, holy cow.
It's amazing. I think AI is obviously, but it's so misunderstood. Like I know people who leverage it all the time, and I think we're all misunderstanding it. Even the experts, this is something that's interesting. They'll tell you they don't know how this functions, but it just functions. Like it's a neural network. It's like our brains, So how do you really tell how your brain's working, how information is getting passed around? You don't. You just know that it's doing it. So it's so misunderstood. But the biggest thing people need to know is you can leverage it in ways that you've never that this world has never seen.
Right.
And, everybody's worried about, and I don't want to make this an all AI talk, but I can talk all day about AI. But if people are worried about, will it replace jobs? I think it will replace some jobs. But what I'm seeing it do in my business and in others' business is just make people's jobs way more efficient and effective and save time for them and allow them to take on more jobs than they were doing before, right? So I think it's just making our world go faster and more efficient and more effective rather than just killing off a bunch of jobs. Of course, that's going to be something that's going to happen, but I think it's going to open up a lot more jobs. We just have to embrace it,
we could go down this road for a long time because you just sparked so many different thoughts in my head. I've heard AI is the next form of human evolution, and it'll take our consciousness to future generations, and who cares if the human body remains? And I'm like, okay,
that is so funny. I hear people say things, and I'm just like, okay, let's calm down. I am fully embracing AI, but I think people are taking it. It's funny, and there's always a truth, typically somewhere in the middle. But you got the people who are like, this is evil, this is what's going to kill her. Then the people who are like, this is going to, you just hear so many different things. I just think on the most basic level, it's just a great efficiency tool.
Yeah. It could be a cool estimator.
Estimation
tool. Okay, so I want to jump into the details of construction management, what you're an expert at, and what you have a lot of experience in, and just see if we can really get into maybe some valuable nuggets on actual construction management.
Let's do it.
And see how you think on some of these things. So I'm just going to rattle off some things and kind of get your insight on it or your thoughts. Now, we also, I was thinking about this before the podcast. I was like, it doesn't really make sense to talk about costs as they are today, because this podcast could be around 3 years from now, and who knows what costs will be. So we don't really
Sure.
need like dollar amounts or anything like that. But examples of like, I wanted to start by getting you some cost management strategies. Let's talk about sourcing materials. If I was going in to either develop or rehab a property, how would you help me source materials?
So with the Rehabber's Playbook, or just in general?
Let's say if I'm a client of TRP, like what does that look like as a client, or what advice would you give me from your experience?
The biggest thing we do in the group, and I'll go group and just in general, and I'll probably answer in general with all these questions, but we're trying to connect you with the best people in the business. You know, I've worked with so many different suppliers in my time. Guarantee you there's not a cabinet supplier I haven't worked with. I've worked with all the big siding suppliers, roofing suppliers. I'm trying to connect you with the best people who provide the best service and the best pricing. We actually don't have like discounts within our group. I think Jim Ingersoll and Dealmaker has great discounts, and I tell people to leverage them. And then I point people into ways that they can get their own discounts. You can talk to these local suppliers, get credit accounts, get Lowe's accounts and Home Depot accounts. And I recommend everybody do all of these things, because there's some people who might be like, oh, that's not that much, it's not a big deal. But we're talking to investors, let's be honest. Everybody here wants those discounts. It's fun seeing $100, $500, $1,000 get taken off of your bill. This is a relationship business, even with supplies. And the best thing to do is just make sure you're working with people who have that, vendors who can give you a personal relationship. That's where local vendors are probably going to be preferred, in my opinion, over Lowe's and Home Depot.
Right.
Lowe's and Home Depot have a great place. I use them all the time. Those are my last minute runs, and I get 5 to 10% off everything through these different accounts. But you should definitely work with local suppliers, build good relationships, because I say this all the time too, material delays typically affect projects more than contractor delays. And people don't realize that until material shows up incomplete or 3 days late, and then their contractor has to go to another job and come back 6 days late, and then your project's in a spin, you know?
That's interesting, because I think a lot of people will make excuses around materials. But if people realize they could be they could have more control using local relationships or local resources to get their hands on these materials, even if they might not be as cheap, you still get them on time, and you might save that way too. So there's basically different. They could be less expensive because you have these relationships, but getting them on time, getting the right material, getting the right quality is really important.
It's way more important.
I typically do not relate materials to relationships, but it's interesting that you say that.
Great, that's the first question, because it could be the most controversial, because in this business, investors are trying to save a penny anywhere, and I completely understand it. But I am all about like running a good budget up front, not a budget like, hey, maybe I can get LVP at a discount because this guy has a warehouse of it, you know. I'd rather you run a realistic budget with good team players. Like, it's all about running a good team, and your vendors are just as much as contractors. And I can't tell you how many times people try to save money, not only with contractors, but with material, and end up in a really big problem. Like, I know of a person who said they have LVP for 50 cents less, which is big if you look at a whole house, and they have it in a warehouse, but it shows up, some of it's damaged, it shows up a couple days. Everything that could go wrong went wrong. It was damaged, it showed up late, and they didn't have any extra. So they had to like take a bathroom and do an entire new flooring, and the rest of the house was this LVP. So you just got to be careful with always trying to save money in this business, unfortunately.
What about labor bidding? So like bidding labor, what advice do you typically give? I mean, I guess more of the same, relationships.
Yeah, I advise people not to price shop. That's one of the big things. You should be contractor shopping, not price shopping. And eventually the price is going to come down on you if you give good business and you have good relationships and you treat them right and you run a good business. But that is the number, like, people ask me these questions all the time, like, what's the number one thing you see people do wrong? Number one is price shopping, not contractor shopping. I want somebody reliable, dependable on the job. And it's always, always, always. It's not 99% of the time. It's not 90%. 100% of the time you get what you pay for. It's
Right.
a law of this business. And if you're trying to save a buck, you end up in problems a lot of times.
So help me understand, what does a price shopping conversation sound like, and what does a contractor shopping conversation sound like?
It's a good question. If you're price shopping, you go get 3 bids and you get the smallest bid. And that's it. You don't go any further. Your contractor shopping, you take into account all the prices, but then you have the conversation with them. You make sure you have a good gut feeling. I think that's incredibly important. You make sure they're saying the right things. You make sure this is somebody that you can have a business relationship with. You're having business relationships with your contractors. So when things go wrong, they always do, is this somebody you think is going to be reasonable and have a good, realistic conversation with you to find a good answer or a good solution? These are incredibly important things. And the person who gives you the lowest bid, they usually don't value your job as much. That means that they could cut corners on the job itself. They could show up late. And when things go wrong, they are much less likely to help you out in any way. So that's typically what you see. Get 3 bids, choose the smallest bid. And we can all end up in that pattern from time to time. Even me, I'll be like, that looks really good, but I don't get a good feeling from that guy. And every time I go against my gut feeling, I end up in a problem.
I can relate to that in a lot of different ways. I've made those mistakes before.
We all have.
Yeah, and I've learned that having a stronger team just pays off in the long run. Even if it costs you a little bit more money now, it pays off in the long run.
And I think having confidence in your budget is a huge part of that. If you have confidence in your budget, you don't need to be going to save $100 on a bid. You know, it's like, I know what I'm going to spend. I know I'm going to make a profit. Let's just get the job done and build a good team.
What about contingency planning? What advice do you give for either your clients or others who are rehabbing on contingency, building in contingencies into the plan?
You should always have it. That's definitely something that a lot of people miss. And you can do it a few different ways. I'll give you a handful of different things with contingencies because it's actually more complex than just adding a number on the bottom. Because you just add the wrong number onto the bottom, you're making bad offers, right? Say you put $20,000 that's completely unnecessary as a contingency, your offer is going to be affected with that. You might not get the deal. You put a too small of contingency just because you're throwing a number out there, you're going to also be in trouble when things go wrong because they always do. So it's good to use a percentage. I like using 10% as a basic rule. And then the more complex or the more big the project gets, and the more potential surprises you see in there, you might be able to go up to 15%. If you're ever at 20%, you probably have a problem and you need to go back to like, what's my estimate? What's my scope of work? But that's a really good range. You can even go down to 5% if you want. But I like that 10% number. And, you know, just think of it this way. Full gut renovations, the most surprises. Cosmetic renovations, the least surprises. And then you have everything in between. New construction, surprisingly, you don't need too much contingency because you don't get as many surprises besides in like permitting, site prep, stuff like that, which you still need contingencies for. I'll throw a few more things out there. There's a couple ways to do contingencies too. It's not just its own line item in your budget. It can also be within certain line items. So say you're doing a full gut renovation, you're doing a big framing job, and you don't know exactly what that number is going to be. Is it 6,000, 7,000, 10,000? You can put a contingency specifically in that number or in that line item, whether it's 10%, 15%, and you can, you know, kind of cover yourself that way. Don't forget contingencies in your schedule too. I know people don't like to hear about contingencies, and once you start throwing them everywhere, it could be, you know, a slippery slope, but you have to have contingencies in your schedule too.
And I think probably with better you still will always need contingencies, in my opinion, but with better relationships, more experience, more confidence, your contingency can probably shrink a little bit.
Exactly. And then you just have so much more confidence.
Yeah. Awesome. What about timelines? Like, what advice would you give for daily or maybe weekly routines to keep a project on track?
So we have a project management rhythm. That's what we call it. You should have a rhythm. You're trying to be there 2 days a week, and every time you're there, you should have a checklist. Your checklist includes pictures, what's happening within the next 2 weeks, what work has been done, a quality check and a completion check, So you're going through a checklist of different things. I'll kind of rattle off some of them. Like I said, pictures. Before you even walk in the house, you should know what's coming up at least within the next 2 weeks to kind of start planning for it. You should be doing quality and completion checks for the work. You should be doing a site safety check. You should be doing a site cleanliness check. And you should be making, by the way, all of these calls before you drive away. So you know that somebody's not on schedule for the next 2 weeks. You need to give them a phone call. Don't wait until you get back to your office. Get into your truck maybe before you drive away, before you hit gas or come out of park. Make the phone call before you leave. Because we all know you're going to go to the next job, make a list of things to do and people to call, and then the next job, and then you get to the office and more people are calling you. You're never going to call those people. So urgency is huge, and some of the best people in this business, you'll see them like literally walking around, stopping conversations with you, making a phone call or shooting a text, and then continuing the conversation. Mm-hmm. And then takeoffs. We've all been there where you need to measure for the doors and you do your whole site visit and you drive away and you need to put in that material order like today, but you forgot to do all the takeoffs. So these are just a checklist of things that always need to be going through your head in this site rhythm. And like I said, 2 days a week is great. And if you can create a weekly rhythm, that's even better. You know, we used to have Mondays are field days, Tuesdays are office days, Wednesdays are field days, Thursdays office days, Fridays like a hybrid. So, you know, organization, rhythm, habit, these are things that make people successful.
So I know that change orders and mid-project delays are case by case, and they could cause all kinds of different, either like very slight delays or just devastating delays or whatever. So I know they're all handled case by case, but what advice would you give to investors, rehabbers that are dealing with change orders or mid-project delays?
Change orders, first tip, they always happen. Second tip is we can find ways to minimize them. What people get into in rehabbing, that when you get into new construction, you actually find out, it actually gives you good perspective. But rehabbing, since it feels like we're doing things on the fly and so many things are like just surprises left, right, out of nowhere, we tend to not plan as well for rehabs as you would for new construction, where we know A to Z what's going on the project. So with rehabs, people don't plan as in depth as people plan for new construction, and you definitely can. And that's where people have too many change orders, and then it's overwhelming, and things start falling, you know. So plan early as much as you can is going to limit that. Change orders come a lot of times from people not understanding the product that they want to build first. It's not from like,
Interesting.
It's not from like, they're from surprises too. Those are the two places. Surprises are always going to happen. But people think it's like scope creep, if you've heard of that. Scope creep is like, I was going to do LVP flooring, but now I'm doing hardwood. Another way of saying that is I just noticed all the other comps in this neighborhood have hardwood and I can't do LVP and get the right price. That's what it really is. So knowing your product up front, this is where real estate comes into construction so much. Looking at your comps, knowing what the market needs, whether that's a rental or a flip, by the way. People think rentals is just, let's put like the cheapest stuff in there and put somebody in there. It's not always the case. Like different neighborhoods or different price points you need to rent that at, need different types of features to it. So knowing the product can help limit your change orders, and then planning that out first. And then your change orders are the surprises that are always going to happen, but it's not going to be that scope creep, if that makes sense.
No, that makes perfect sense. And that's a good way to look at it too. So better prepared might limit the change orders that you face. And again, it goes back to this. To me, my brain always goes back to this. What are you in control of? Because everyone makes excuses, right? There's always, I tried real estate investing or I tried flipping, but then I hired this contractor, had all these change orders and stuff. Maybe that's the case. Maybe they gave you the cheapest quote and then now they're like making up on their costs throughout. But I think largely it's like if people just realize they are largely in control of what happens. So maybe don't hire the cheapest contractor, back to what we talked about earlier. But to some extent, yes, change orders will be out of your control. But I think to your point in your experience, like they could largely be limited with the right preparation, the right team.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. We're always in control. Extreme ownership is something that you should definitely take into project management. And for example, I got a project right now that my guys are so behind schedule, it's driving me crazy. Like we should be through Ruffins, and the city's part of it too. And I can say all day long, I told them to pull permits early, which I did. I could say all day long that I've been on them like crazy, which I am. Like, I'm taking ownership and responsibility for everything I can control. And you're right. That's going to determine if you're successful or not in this business, because there's problems everywhere. It's just how we deal with them.
So we touched on it a little bit earlier, but I think a lot of people would be interested to hear you talk about vetting contractors. So I have some experience with this, good and bad, and I might end up sharing a story. We'll see. But how do you recommend for investors to vet their contractors and know if that's who they want to work with? Kind of pricing may have something to do with it. Like, yeah, maybe not the most expensive, maybe not the less expensive, but like, what else do you look at?
So I love the responses I get when I tell a group this, but my number one advice is trust your gut. And what I get in response is either absolutely or how am I going to trust my gut when I don't know how to deal with contractors? When I don't have much experience in this business. And my answer to you there is your gut feeling is your gut feeling for a reason. I have this thing called, I might go down a tangent and then I'm going to swing it back as much as I can. But I have this theory called the law of contractor attraction. It's like the law of attraction, but for contractors, right? I think you could probably surmise where I'm going with it, but people think of contractors as these unorganized, untrustworthy guys who always show up late and do bad work. And if you're thinking of them that way, you're going to naturally start finding those people. But if you're thinking of contractors as really good, smart, great businessmen, you start attracting those people to your business. And we're in this business of creating teams, so trusting your gut is so important. And people thinking that they need to dull down their gut feeling because they don't know what a contractor should be making them feel. It's not exclusive to one industry or the other. If they're making you feel a weird way and it doesn't seem like they're trustworthy, just for any reason, right? And there's a lot of great studies out there about your gut feeling, how it's actually telling you something subconsciously, because what you're hearing is not the same of what cues are kind of given off to you. But that's another tangent I can go down. Trusting your gut's so important. Don't dull your feeling when you're vetting these contractors. If they're not making you feel comfortable or confident, they're not the person for you. Move on, try to find somebody. Now, other things for vetting them is just really looking at their business practice. Like, if you ask for a bid and they tell you they're going to get it to you Friday, do they get it to you Friday? Do they have all the right paperwork? The boring stuff, but the important stuff. It's not just a sign that they're in business and they're doing things appropriately. I mean, that's just a sign in itself that that's somebody you want to do work with, Yeah.
So finding these contractors, it can be difficult because I've noticed that investors will share all kinds of information, but when they have a good contractor, they hold it close to the tip, right? Or close to the hip. So they basically want this contractor to work for them when they need them, right? And they do everything they can to keep this contractor busy on all of their projects so they can't go anywhere else, right?
That's right.
And so you will hear, oh, hey, I need a private lender, and everyone's like, go talk to this person. I need this, okay, go talk to that person. I need a contractor, and everyone's like,
I don't use contractors.
Yeah, and everyone kind of like, I need this guy or whatever. And
It's
a lot
so
of people
true.
are in that kind of environment. I kind of understand those reasons where, yeah, we want to share a lot of things, but we need our team to be available for us.
Sure.
How do you find the contractors that are good but have availability for you?
A lot of ways I can go with this one too. It's actually one of the big things I wanted to start the Rehabbers Playbook with and create a community focus. Is because I was getting asked and requests so many times about contractors, and I was giving them out. This is what happened, and it's so true. There's a reason people keep them close to the hip. I've had some of the best contractors and vendors I've ever worked with start getting bad at their job because I referred them to so many people that they're getting pulled in so many different directions. That's one thing. Another thing that happened is you start referring to them to people you don't really know, who don't really treat them properly.
Right.
And then you end up with this weird relationship like, Why did you send me to this guy who's beating down my prices, not paying me, and calling me on weekends, you know? So that's why we built a community where it's a little more tight knit. So if you're going to your group of real estate investors, that's the importance of close relationships. Whether you're in a small community or you're just building great relationships like us, we would share contractors, but kind of other people that are, and you guys are busy, so maybe they're even too busy, but you know, there's people who might be not as close, and that's going to be a lot less likely. Two other ways that people find contractors that are completely underutilized. One is going to suppliers. Go to your suppliers, ask them, who does good business? Who do you recommend for me? Suppliers all day long are asking for cards because they know that they are going to give them out to other people. And I found some of the best contractors through suppliers, and my group is constantly giving me great stories of great contractors, and sometimes giving me great contractors from relationships that they've had with suppliers.
That's interesting. And if those contractors are using those suppliers, the suppliers want those contractors to stay busy.
There you go.
Yeah, so that's interesting. That's a great tip.
And another way is ask your contractors for other contractors, right? It takes you getting that first contractor, of course, but they like to work together. Usually a good contractor's going to refer a good contractor. Right. Just be careful of asking a bad contractor for a contractor, because they're going to refer somebody who probably does business very similar to them. Right. But that is very underutilized, and that's how I built my team. Like, they all go to the same churches. They all go to the same cookouts for the most part. They are in their own kind of community. So that's a really, really smart and great way to find contractors as well. I don't recommend Facebook. I don't recommend Yelp. I just don't recommend them. You know, I've never seen great results with that.
It's too hit or miss, probably. You're not increasing your odds by throwing it out to such a big pool, where if you could get in a tight-knit community with trusted referral sources, that's probably increases your odds way better.
Yeah, and they're getting a bunch of phone calls if they're publicly marketing. Here's one thing, it is something to consider, something I've considered with my reasoning for it, but I know that none of my people that I work with, like, I can't even think of one that is advertising on Facebook or Yelp. And I have a team of 50 to 100 different contractors and vendors I use on a consistent basis. I mean, of course, vendors, like suppliers, are going to market.
Right.
But if we're talking contractors, I don't know any of them that are marketing. Right. They're busy. They're doing good work, you know. Right. As a matter of fact, they don't want more phone calls. Yeah.
When I would work with contractors on my rehabs, I would often want to incentivize them. Same with my team at Peak. If they're doing good work, of course you're paying them a salary or something like that, but I always feel like there needs to be some sort of incentive when they are going above and beyond. Yeah. What sort of incentives would you like to see contractors or investors provide contractors to be a stronger team?
I love that you asked me, first of all, about incentives and not punishment. Because most people ask me about punishment. Yeah. And I'm just like, that is a slippery slope. You are putting yourselves immediately on other sides of the table. And now you're sitting here debating all day long about what's a delay and what's proper work, instead of just focusing on gathering good people. Right. So I just want to put that out there. I never recommend punishing people, because also, I always tell them, if you're going to punish them, you have to incentivize them, right? Now, incentivizing, I'm a big believer in it. I give bonuses all the time. I help, you know, I don't know if I have like real rules or ways that I would recommend other people. I would say trust your gut in a way and know like what they would appreciate out of you. But there's many times where they do a favor for me and I'll throw them an extra $100. Like, that's not a big deal, but to them it means a lot, and it is extra money, right? So I don't put incentives in place, although I think that's a great idea. Like, you finish by a certain point, you get a certain amount more, but don't say you get a certain amount and then if you finish less, you get less, right? But I would almost rather surprise them with it, because they're not expecting it, and it kind of comes out of nowhere.
That's exactly how I would handle it. Because if you give them the incentive to finish by a certain date, who knows what's going to happen to the quality of work, right? Because then they're drilled by that incentive, and they might, slip through some stuff. So what I would do is, if I knew I had 3 other projects lined up and they crush this one house or two houses, I would give them a big bonus.
Yeah.
And then it would basically, they would be waiting for that. And I'm fine doing it if they perform the same way. So I'm
Right.
fine setting that expectation.
Yeah.
But I don't want to let them know it's coming or make it a part of the contract or anything like that. I want to just give it to them as a surprise. And then it's sort of like, oh, this is what happens when I perform. And who knows what these next 3 houses will be like.
And it brings up an idea, sorry to cut you off, but it brings up just real quick an idea that if you put it in the contract, them not finishing on time and getting that bonus might even still feel like a punishment in a way, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they know that money's available.
Yeah.
And you're saying, well, now you don't get it.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah, right.
I would rather them just not know it was on the table or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
So if things do get delayed or it doesn't go well, then the incentive might be a little bit less. Or maybe, hey, we're a team and maybe I should have done better through some of that. And, you know, they still worked hard to get me out of this situation. And then there's an incentive. But I look at it as like that contractor needs to be a teammate and not, there's so many times where because there's a contract in place, it's an adverse party.
Right.
And that's, I think, what trips so many people up and so many different, even in property management, it's like we got a lease, there's the tenant, and the tenant's on the other side of the fence. And we have a property management agreement, and there's an owner, and the owner's on the other side of it's really hard to be on the other side of the fence of all these different people and the vendors we work with and everything else. And so the more we can remove that fence and be like, hey, look, there are guidelines and legal agreements that we have to follow, but we're all on the same team.
Right.
We're all in this together, and we can all have a way better experience if we act that way, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so recently there was not to go too far down the tangent, but or off the path, but there was a client of Peaks that there was a situation where we could have done a little bit better. We didn't do anything against our agreement. We didn't break any laws or any rules or anything like that. But the client was unhappy. It's something that we had communicated. It was somewhat of an abnormal situation. And our team, I look at our team as like the expert. We should be the best communicators to help our clients through this, even though we kind of were going above and beyond what our obligations were.
Sure.
Well, that client was really upset. And that client was like, you owe us all kinds of money. And I was just like, you know, I looked at it and I was like, ended up just saying like, hey, look, we could have done better. Mm-hmm. We'll cover some of the cost. I have no problem doing that. We're all part of the team. Here's what I think is reasonable. And the client was like over the moon at how it was handled because they came in just thinking it was going to be a battle.
Right.
And I came in, I was like, we're on the same team. Like we should have carried a little bit more weight in this area. We should have communicated a little bit better.
Right.
And so I agree. Like I'm happy to pay you some money and you know, compensate you for some of the pain you're going to feel for what we could have controlled.
Yep.
And we actually ended up making the client completely whole. And then the tenant was unhappy over there. We made them completely whole. None of it was our liability, but we were just like, I think we could have done better and we could have probably stayed out of that situation. So let's jump in and help them. And I feel like you could do within reason, all this is within reason, right?
Sure.
Where there's no like egregious neglect or malicious intent or anything like that. We're all on the same team. And I feel like if people really take that to heart, we can accomplish a lot more.
Dude, I love the way you do business. It's just amazing to see what you've built here. And you're in such a tough industry, you know? So and I can somewhat relate because construction and contracting, you're dealing with people who are upset. And, you know, there's some people, maybe even successful people, who would look at that and be like, that's not how I do business. Mm-hmm. That is exactly how I do business. I do whatever I can do. You say other side of the fence, I always say other side of the table. Like I imagine a table and not sitting across, but sitting side by side, like facing a problem or a situation. So yeah, and I've cut profit or given money in situations where I definitely probably shouldn't, right. But it's like, let's have good relationships. Yeah, let's build a good business.
It's a long-term game.
Yeah.
Quality versus speed versus cost. Yeah. So these are the factors that you have to take into consideration when you're doing rehab work or development. Mm-hmm. You can have really high quality, which might go a little bit slower. Yeah. You can have really fast speed, which might affect the quality. Yeah. Or you can have really high or low cost, which affects either of those, right?
Right.
What trade-offs do you make? Like, what do you get rid of first?
Wow, good question. That is a very common thing to hear, right? Is you got the 3, you can only have 2 of the 3, mm-hmm. Right?
Right.
But I've never been asked that question. And y'all are going to hate my answer. My answer would probably be price. Here's the thing. I've said it a couple times in this interview. I want to know my budget, know my schedule, and hit that with a great team over and over and over again and build a repeatable business. if I'm cutting price and I'm sacrificing speed or quality, I'm going to have a lot of problems scaling this business. If I know the price up front and I budget for it and I make a good offer and I get it for a good price, then my profit's built in. I don't need to penny pinch my way for an extra 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 of profit. You know, I would rather get the job done, move on to the next one. So if you hate me for this answer, I'm sorry, but it's price. Yeah, I want quality and speed over everything. I want a great team.
I think some people will look at that and be like, well, he's a contractor. Of course, he's going to say, like, don't sacrifice the cost.
It's a fair judgment.
I would tend to agree with that because it's literally the story we just shared. Mm-hmm. Like, if we want this to be a long-term game and we want these relationships to be long-term, we're not going to be cutting our quality. You know, by trying to make more money on this one project, right? And so there might be some projects that don't go as well or aren't as profitable as you think they will be. But if it's truly a long-term game for you and a long-term goal and strategy, then you're going to realize that there are some projects that you might break even on or lose on. But in doing that in ethical and moral way, and where you're taking care of your team, you're not causing them to lose as well. It's going to help you win 10x as much over the next few years. And so with you saying, like, you know, don't just try to shave costs to make up for the rest, it makes a lot of sense.
And if you have a good team, when you need to shave costs, they'll work with you. That's a big thing. I'm a sports guy. That's why it's called the Rehabber's Playbook. That's why we keep calling it a team. Think of sports. You don't even have to think of sports. In any industry ever, talent costs money. And even if you want to say, well, there's some teams that they don't pay for their players and they all work cohesively and then they end up winning, you know, that happens sometimes, but eventually those guys need to get paid, right? So talent always costs money. And if we're sitting here trying to build the weakest team because we're not willing to pay people, you think you're going to win out there on the field? You're not, you know, you got to think of it in that regard.
I went with the cheapest contractor, and it worked out in the beginning. And it was a good short-term game.
That's right.
And this contractor rehabbed, I think, somewhere around 8 or 9 houses for me in quick succession. Like one right after another. I think we did 3 at the same time, and we were burying them. And he was just rolling through it, and he was my general contractor, right? So he was doing everything. So we got through, let's just call it our 9th house. It could have been the 8th house or something like that, but let's call it our 9th house. We got to the 9th house. Everything went well, but I started to notice things were slowing down a bit. The projects weren't really as quick or efficient as they used to be. Then we got to the 10th house. And me, a complete idiot, was like, okay, I've done 10 or 9 or whatever rehabs I've done. This house works if we just completely rip off the second floor and just add a level, you know, pop the top, add a level, and then we'll make it a 3-2, and then we'll totally rehab the whole house. And so anyway, I went to this contractor, and he was just like, you know, the same guy who just went through 9 houses fairly successfully with me. He was like, yeah, man, yeah, I got that. And he's one of the pleasers, just say yes to everything. He's like, yeah, of course, yeah, I can do that. I'm like, all right. So you can get permits, and then you can, like, structurally and everything, you know what you're doing to be able to pop the top, like completely demo the what exists of the second level, which is just like a walk-up attic or whatever, and then like reframe everything. And he was like, yeah, I got it. And he gave me the price, and I was like, holy cow, like that's not that bad. And I was like, but he's run through all these other houses. And I'm like, and he's done a good job, and we got tenants in them and the refi and everything. And I'm like, this is good, man. And so now I have this house where I think he quoted me, this is a few years ago, I think he quoted me maybe like 60 or 80,000 for this job. And the whole downstairs needs to be demoed and renovated and everything. Then we're popping the top and everything. It was like 60 or 80,000. And I was like, great, let's go. So he demos the top, demos the entire second floor, pulls the roof off, demos a lot of the framing, just starts tearing it all off. And this is like in the peak time that I'm building peak, like that I don't have a really strong team yet or a robust team. And so it's me, and I'm in the weeds, and I'm spending like every waking hour, 80 hours a week, trying to take care of my clients and the tenants and handling maintenance and leasing and everything. And I'm just like getting after it. So I'm not paying attention to this rental property. And then all of a sudden, but I'm driving by maybe once every 2 weeks,
Yeah.
and I'm like checking, and I see the tarp on the roof, and I'm like, hey man, when are you going to come back?
Yeah.
Hey man, and he's answering the call, and he's saying, oh, I'll be back tomorrow. I'll be back tomorrow. I'll be back tomorrow. And he never shows up. And then eventually, like let's call it 3 weeks later, he sends his whole crew out. And his whole crew is running through the house. And they're doing all this stuff. And I'm like, yes, I'm saved. But then they're gone the next day, and I don't see him for another month.
Yep.
And so he's doing just enough. And so like 4 months later, because I'm not paying attention to this thing,
Right.
I go in the house, and it is like the drywall from the first floor that hasn't been demoed yet on the ceiling is like stalactites or stalagmites, whatever comes from the ceiling.
Yeah.
And it's like there's just mold everywhere, and it's like the water is getting through, and it's just been raining inside the house, and it's like it was a nightmare. It was a disaster. And I think I was definitely playing the short-term game there, because I was like, this guy's rolling through houses, and it's the cheapest guy. And I learned my lesson, where if I would have had a more reliable sort of mid-level GC helping me out, he wouldn't have quoted so cheap, because I knew when that quote came in, I was like, this, okay.
Doesn't seem right.
Yeah, and I think he had to bail on the job because he was just bleeding money.
Sure.
So anyway, of course, he did it after my second draw, and it was a large draw to help him get all the materials and stuff. Never saw him again. And then brought in another contractor, and it was I think he quoted $40,000 to get it back to the original scope.
Right.
And then it was the same. It was like another 60 or 80 on top of that.
Yeah.
But if that would have been my first deal, I would have been out of the game for a while.
Well, to be honest with you, after 9 successful jobs, that's not like, you can take extreme ownership. I know that's what you're doing and you're going to do. But after 9 jobs, you feel really, it's like clockwork.
Right.
You're like, okay,
Right.
I'm feeling good.
Yeah.
The only thing is, of course, the red flags with the cost. But like, pop tops are hard to gauge. I'm sure it was the first time you've done it.
It was.
Yeah. So like, yeah, that's tough. But those are the stories that people from the outside looking in, like you said, or if it's your first deal, that can stop people from being in the business.
If that was my first deal, I would have been done for a while.
Yeah.
Now, fortunately, like property management shows me what real estate investing can do, so I probably would have been motivated to get back in. But financially, I would have been done for a while. And fortunately, since we were so successful in the first few deals, it helped me afford that screw up, right? I was actually, I think I sold one of the houses, and it was such a good deal that I was like, here you go, this will fund the whole rest of the project. And then I still wish I didn't have to sell that house, but it put me in a position where I was like, okay, cool, good lesson learned on that. And this is why it's so important to do it the right way.
Exactly.
When you are helping investors with due diligence, what kind of like walkthrough or what kind of advice or suggestions do you give them before they purchase a property?
Due diligence covers a lot of different things. I still want you starting with the end in mind, always by looking at comps. Because what I think a lot of people do is they start with the profit in mind and then they work backwards from there. Well, if you do that, then you come up with a rehab budget that doesn't really relate to what product you can actually build.
Right.
That is, if price shopping for contractors is problem number 1, problem number 2 is seeing people start with the budget and then trying to fit that product in that budget when it's just not the way this business works. Everything costs money. You can penny pinch your way to save a few bucks, but you got to build the right product. So go in building that product. Yeah.
So you're saying that people will say, man, I could potentially make $60,000 on this. Then they're going to do their due diligence and they will change those numbers to keep the $60,000 in profit, and it's an unrealistic budget.
Essentially, yeah. No, and it's funny being in, like, I'm glad you look surprised because it's surprising to me how many people, and even coaches, I see coaches out there, rehab coaches, they're like, okay, to make your 70%, you need to get this done with 60,000. Now let's fit this in 60,000. But if you do the math, it's $100,000 rehab. Like, you can't penny pinch your way into that.
Right.
Yeah, it's shocking to me how much that's a thing. But yeah, that's like what a lot of people do.
We'll get calls and say, hey, I need this to rent for $4,000.
Yeah.
And I'm like, we don't control that. I
That's
mean,
right.
we could do really high-end marketing. We can do a great description, photos, and we have a great reputation as a company. So like that goes a little ways, but we don't control that market, right? So
That's right.
you can't just say 4,000 and we'll make it happen, or find the team who will, and on a $2,500 rental, or something
Right.
like that. So it's the same with like a flip or a rehab. It's like you don't really get to choose what the profit is. It's only what your purchase price is,
Yeah.
and then that will dictate the profit. But like you don't get to choose you don't get to do that. Like, you don't get to put the cart ahead of the horse.
And similarly, in flipping, people who are pricing their house very, very high, too high for the market to bear because they went over budget, you know.
Right.
I get it to a certain extent, but sometimes you have to cut your losses, put it on the market for a good price, and then go from there.
As a contractor, are there any red flags that you would tell investors to just stay away from when they see things on a property?
Foundation problems, waterproofing problems. If you have a good extra 10 to 20, or at least throw a really big contingency in there, that might be where you're really padding that contingency number, or putting a line item plus a contingency for foundation repair. But when you see a wet crawl space, a wet basement, or cracks, and it's hard to be very specific on what cracks, but like vertical cracks through block and brick, those are red flags. But there's a lot of red flags that people think are a problem that I wouldn't recommend against. I get a lot of people in the group who ask, is mold going to be a problem? Is it going to be really expensive? It's like, yeah, you got to put some money in there, but once the mold's gone, it's gone, you know,
Right.
and once you dry out the crawl space. So foundation repair can just be really big. And I think a lot of people recognize that, but you have to have the idea of what to look for, which is where I think people sometimes don't feel confident. So just keep an eye on the foundation. It's really common, even for me, by the way, to be analyzing a deal and forget to peek in the crawl space or really take a good look. But it's important to make that happen. Have somebody crawl around, pay somebody $100 to do it.
Right.
It's worth it.
Talking about the Rehabber's Playbook, TRP, how does TRP transition unsure investors to confident project managers?
Probably, I mean, I think we talked about a lot of it today too. The big thing is, this is what's interesting that I've realized recently with TRP. When we first started, it was all about me being a nerd, putting video courses together, putting templates together, putting roadmaps together like we talked about earlier. And all of that stuff is still part of it. But now what we're really doubling down on is community and masterminding. So one of the biggest things that give us confidence in this business is not only everything I just said, like having the roadmap, having all the tools, the resources, the training. So if you're not running good budgets, run a good budget. If you don't know how to do due diligence, we have training on all of this stuff, like too much stuff. We have hundreds of training videos, 50 plus templates and documents, but that's going to give you confidence. But knowing you have a place to always get answers, advice, or even just people to celebrate your wins, that is really what TRP is starting to become about. Learning from others' case studies. You know, experience is the best teacher. I can teach you all this stuff all day long, or at least the way I do the business, but learning from other people's challenges and wins is one of the best ways to learn. So we're really doubling down on the importance of community, which just means we're trying to make sure our Facebook group is always answering questions. One of the biggest things I'm proud of is when somebody asks a question in the group, it's not like a dead Facebook group. We have people writing paragraphs, many people jumping in. This is what I would do. Check your budget. People will post their budget and the whole group will come chime in on what they think is accurate or not accurate. So that's really, those are the two of the pillars of making sure they have confidence, having support, and then also having the formal training as well. Yeah.
So if I were a new investor and I want to do rehab projects, but I've never done one, TRP would be a good place for me to go, a good community to be a part of, so I can basically see 360 degrees what it is to be a rehabber with all kinds of tools and resources and experienced folks that I can talk to. So you want to find those people. You have the experienced people in the group already to help pull the others along, but
That's right.
You believe that the TRP will actually empower investors that have not rehabbed yet.
That's right. Yeah, especially if they haven't rehabbed yet. If you haven't rehabbed yet, you are me in front of that house when I was in college looking at a $20,000 budget because I put the budget before the, I put the profit before the actual comps or whatever. So you are me looking at that project, not confident in if we're going to actually make money. You can take a look at us, see what it is, but for a very small investment of time and money, you can just make sure you have full confidence in everything, and you can just plug into a great community. So we have people who are doing their first flip in the community. We have people who are flipping 50 to 100 houses a year, many of them. We have people who are building dozens of new construction houses a year. We just have such a thriving community. And another thing I'm proud of with the group is everybody is active. There's nobody in there that's just kind of sitting in the corner watching. Everybody's in there doing deals, and flipping houses or doing their first BRRRR, deal and getting their rehab right so they can refinance and get their money out and rent and cash flow. All this stuff is I see every day in the group. So yeah, it's just giving the confidence where instead of standing outside the house looking at it saying, I don't know who to call, how much it's going to cost, how long this is going to take, and if I'm going to even make money, then you're sleepless nights. We've all been there. Instead, you're like, you know what? I have everything I need to do this. I just need to do a little legwork.
I'll put you on the spot with this one. Mm-hmm. Do you have a success story that you can share from a TRP member and maybe how TRP helped them find their way in the rehabbing world?
Sure. And I don't think they'd mind me calling them out by name. I'll just say first names, right? I think of Linda a lot. She came into the group and her first message to me was, I'm a realtor. I've never flipped a house. I want to start flipping houses. And she took our template. We hooked her up with the contractor. I looked at her estimate and I said, everything looks good. Every time she needed a sub or a vendor, I hooked her up with it. I helped her with the lending on that too. Your dad might have been her lender.
Probably.
I think, yeah, I really think so. So, and she flipped her first house. Now she's in the middle of her second one. And this is all happening really fast. When it comes to new construction, Sandra, and you can see her story on our YouTube page, she had a lot that she was investing in Hopewell. She had an extra lot. She's been successful with short-term rentals down there. And she built her first new construction project. I basically walked her through it from the start. Now, every time she wants to build a new construction project in the future, she has everything she needs to get that done. So these stories happen all the time. And right now, currently, as we sit here, we have 6 people taking on their first new construction project. And we have 4 people I know who are partnering with other people in the group to do their first new construction project starting this year, breaking ground within the next few months. So again, I realized early on that if we really want to take this community seriously, everybody's got to be productive. Everybody's got to be flipping, building, and successful. Nobody's losing money. That's one of my big things is we're not going to lose money in the group. Nobody's going to do it. We're going to make it happen. Something my mentor told me years ago, and it sticks to me to this day. Those are just a few of the stories that I'm proud of.
Looking ahead, what innovations and developments do you see adding to TRP?
Man, I'm constantly building this thing. This is really my passion. But AI, like we talked about earlier, I'm looking at different ways we can incorporate it. I'm not a big, I don't want to put too much stake into that because I'm not big into the software game. We know other people in the software game. It doesn't look like a fun game. But if I could build some AI tools, that'd be fantastic. Really what I want to note is we are really focusing on new construction, helping people with new construction. For some reason, that's just what we're hearing within the group. Everybody wants to build. And I think it's smart. I think we have a supply shortage, and the more we can work on that in this country, even no matter how hot or soft the market is, you're going to be in a good position bringing houses to the market, whether that's for sale or for rent. So we're doubling down, and actually I would keep an eye out. Maybe by the time this podcast drops, we're going to be putting together a really cool event for new construction builders that we're just in the drafting version of. And then I just want to grow this group, man. I want to grow this group of great people. At this point, like I said, I'm not collecting resources, videos, training. I'm collecting great people. I want people who are not only doing their first or second flip, I want people who are doing 50 to 100 a year. We have everything. There's no more leaning one way or another. It's a mastermind model, and the more I can collect great people, the better. So I just want to keep building it, getting in front of more people. So again, thank you for having me on, because if I can get in front of just one more person or 2 more people, it'd be amazing. Yeah.
Are you still doing investing yourself?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's a lot less than it used to be.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I feel that. Yeah. Once you start growing something else, it's hard to do both.
Right.
So you have some investing, you have TRP. Do you have anything else going on you're going to talk about, or is your time pretty much focused on those?
My time is focused on those. Early on, I used to have shiny object. I would do like 50 different things. Now, the more I get older, is the more I'm just trying to focus on a handful of things.
Smart.
I want to focus on growing the group. I want to keep building houses. I want to build 6 houses a year. I like new construction. I want to do that as much as possible. I want to open up more partnership opportunities within my group, not only for me, but for the group. But I'd love to partner with some more people. If I'm looking long-term personally, I do want to get into lending more. Awesome. So it's nice getting to know your dad a lot more. And I know Rich has been on the podcast. Jim has been on the podcast. Being close to them has been great. So that's what I'm gearing up for. Probably it's a 5-year plan. But overall, I'm focused on those 2 things and then family. Yeah.
Awesome. That's good to hear. Where can people find you if they want to get in touch with you or learn more about TRP?
Right now, I would say I'm very active on Facebook more than any other platform. Brandon Lindsey. Look me up. I should be higher up on that list of Brandon Lindseys. You can find my YouTube channel at Brandon Lindsey TRP. And then our website is therehabbersplaybook.com. And if you want to book a call with me, there is a link there to book a call. If any of this interests you, if you are interested in joining the group, if you like the idea of joining a great community, but also having the training, support, and tools to make all of this happen and to be more confident in this business, I would love for you to book a call with me. We can see if it's a good fit, and we'd love to onboard you if that's the case.
Cool. Any final thoughts?
Just for you, man. I love what you're doing. This is great. Your studio is fantastic. You even got the workout. I feel like I just jumped on the early stages of the Joe Rogan in the real estate world. So you have so much to give to the community. I think you know that, of course, so you don't need my confirmation. But I kind of think of when we were talking about the Malcolm Gladwell outliers type thing. For some reason, I feel like I was blessed and I was put in a position to teach people about project management, construction management in the real estate space. Knowing your background, I think you have been put here to be a leader. You just have so many different things in your life that have put you in the position to be a great leader. And you're building a great company. Now you're going to build a great podcast. So thanks for having me on. And I just had to say that.
Man, I appreciate that. Super, super nice of you. We'll get you in here to do a workout at some point.
Okay, but, when the back gets better.
Yeah, when your back heals up. But man, it's you're doing some incredible things, and you're making waves. And I'm seeing you all over the internet now with the Rehabber's Playbook. I know you're rubbing elbows with some really awesome investors and just awesome people in general in Central Virginia. And I think you're going to make a massive impact with what you're doing. It's an area that a lot of people need help with, and a lot of people lack confidence in. And not many people are sharing, right? And so you're putting yourself in the middle of that to help people be more successful and do rehabbing and new development with confidence. And I appreciate that, and I appreciate your time, and thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate it.